Tonight on The Wrap, is it war or peace with Iran?
We just had a conversation with Iran. Let's see what happens. But I would say that I am not happy.
Donald Trump says he'd rather not blast the hell out of Iran. But what will the US do next if they can't reach a deal? Goodbye, Washington. Hello, Bermuda. After charming the president, the King begins a 3-day visit to the British Overseas Territory. We're there with him. The Met won, Polanski nil. The Green leader says sorry after coming under fire from Britain's most senior policeman over his social media post criticising the force. His opponents line up to kick him while he's down. As The Devil Wears Prada 2 hits the cinemas, we'll ask what makes Anna Wintour the most powerful figure in fashion. In the Premier League, Leeds edge closer to avoiding relegation after a convincing win over Burnley. We discuss the day's biggest stories with The Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the former Chancellor Kwesi Kwarteng. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including The Guardian, which reports Andy Burnham is planning a return to Westminster in weeks. Good evening. After 60 days of war with Iran, Donald Trump said today he's not satisfied with the latest peace proposals. Zoe and Kwesi, welcome to you. And your thoughts, first of all, on Donald Trump's latest utterances today.
It's very hard to parse because he's never satisfied. He always wants to blast them to hell and then doesn't want to blast them to hell. So the idea that he can save face at this stage and figure out a way to make himself look like the victor is impossible to see.
Kwesi?
Look, I think that he's doing what he always does and setting up an opening position. He wants to bargain with them. Zoe's right. I don't think he wants to continue the war, but I don't think the mullahs and the people in charge in Iran want to continue the war. So both sides want to stop the war, but both sides need to be able to claim victory to their supporters, and that's the difficult bit.
Well, the president spoke to reporters on the White House lawn, including our very own Mark Stone. Mark, what were you able to glean from what the president had to say today? Is the war over?
No, it's not over, but I wasn't able to glean very much, to be honest. I couldn't agree more with your two contributors there. It is very hard, even when you're face-to-face with the president, listening to every word. It's very hard to see precisely what his plan is, because I just don't think he's got one. He wants to be able to claim a victory, as Kwasi was saying, but it's also quite clear that the Iranians want to be able to claim a victory, and they have got a key card in the Strait of Hormuz. And until that issue can be resolved, it's really very hard to see where it goes from here. Look, what we do know is that last weekend, the Iranians there was some sort of a plan whereby they would try and take out the prickly issue of the nuclear negotiations from the broader talks. So they wouldn't discuss that. They wouldn't discuss, when if Iran could start enriching uranium again and all that sort of stuff. That's the nub of it. But they would not discuss that, and instead they would discuss other issues, how to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and then deal with the nuclear issue afterwards, which the Americans were not satisfied by. So that was where it was last week. There seems to have been some background negotiations ongoing. Remember, the Pakistanis are the mediators in all of this. But it's really not very clear where things are right now. I did speak to the president this afternoon briefly, and I said to him, look, what happens if your negotiation fails? And he seemed to be suggesting, prior to my question, that the negotiations were going to fail and that a deal was not going to be found, which puts us in a pretty dark place. And there is some suggestion that maybe this weekend the hostilities, the kinetic action, as they call it, could resume. But here's what the president said.
Mr. President, if you can't get a deal on Iran, what next? What will you do? Well, right now we have negotiations going on. They're not getting there. They are very disjointed. They're extremely disjointed. They're not able to get along with each other as leaders. They don't know who the leader is. Their military's been defeated. If we left right now, it would take them 20 years to build back that country, but we're not satisfied at this moment.
So in one breath, the president says if we left right now, that they could, they're 20 years behind getting a nuclear weapon and all of that. Then he says they're completely militarily defeated, and yet he won't address the key question, which is, well, if they are militarily defeated, which may be the case in some respects of their military, how come they're still able to hold this key card and basically hold the world to ransom with the Strait of Hormuz? Remember, the oil price is right now at a 4-year high. What we know too is that the top general here in America, Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he and other military officials briefed the president yesterday on military options going forward. So maybe he's going to try for one massive bombing campaign to try and sort of pull the Iranians back to the negotiating table. It's not clear, because he is not clear on what his strategy, what his exit strategy is on this.
Yes, unclear all round. Mark, thank you very much for the moment. Well, Zoe, we know that today was the deadline that the United States had to, well, Donald Trump had to address Congress on the length of the war, the 30-day deadline. And his line now is that hostilities have been terminated because the ceasefire was put in place.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, the Iranians would never have decided to choke the Strait of Hormuz without Trump's attack on them. They never would have said, this is a great idea, let's hold the world to ransom, because it would have looked like an incredibly dangerous thing to do. But because having been backed into it, they've only thus realised their power. And that is the problem with it, is that he's sort of unleashed an incredible amount of power over the world at large. And you could see that in the week when Iran was letting tankers from some countries through. They're able to actually exert the kind of preferential, basically the dictatorial power over the world markets that Trump is doing within his own nation with tariffs. So Trump has sort of schooled them in how to be as powerful globally as he is in America.
No,
he's really extraordinary.
He's kind of emboldened them and empowered them. In terms of those tariffs, they're still bringing that into play, because they're saying now that if anybody pays this toll that Iran is suggesting it will
put a tariff.
They'll put a tariff on that country. So he's still trying to employ that, at the same time as saying that a deal can't be made and that he's going to blast them to hell, although he'd rather not.
So on the tariffs, we all think they're a terrible idea, but he obviously thinks it's a good idea. So in his terms, it's actually working. I mean, he put tariffs on last year to practically every country in the world. I mean, I remember speaking to an Indonesian government last year, and they were delighted that they only got 20% tariffs, because at the beginning, in April, it was 32%. So they thought it was a great victory. But I said, look, you were paying 3% last year. And people have lost sight of it. He shifted the dial on this, whether we like it or not, and he weaponizes it. He's using it as a carrot and a stick. So when the King went there and had a very successful trip, Donald Trump said, actually, I'll reduce tariffs on whiskey. So it's all this sort of transactional thing. If you're nice to me, I'll be nice. If you're horrible to me, I'll be horrible. That's essentially how he works. But I think Zoe's right in the sense that there were unintended consequences with the war, particularly with the Straits of Hormuz, that I don't think he thought through. And that's why it's very embarrassing, because one of the things he campaigned on was the cost of living. And of course, the oil price going up to where it is now, a 4-year high, will have a massively bad effect on the cost of living.
Just hearing via the AP news agency that the Iranian foreign minister is saying that talks with the US are not conventional. Slight understatement, one might say.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, from the very beginning of the war, Trump was making announcements that he had gone into talks with Iran, and Iran was denying all knowledge of those talks ever having started.
Sure.
So it's really peculiar, and it's not, you do not get the sense that you're dealing with an honest broker in Trump. And I don't say that like as an obvious point. We all know that he lies about some things, but it's very unsettling to be dealing with a leader in charge of a globally seismic war, and you don't even believe that the basic details of what they're telling you are true.
Just very quickly,
Sure.
Quasar, do you think that negotiations have broken down?
Yeah, they're clearly not going well. But as I say, I think both sides really want to stop this, but by saving face as well, which is the difficult bit. Because Trump wants to say that he's won, the Iranians want to say that they've won, but they both want to stop this war. I'm pretty sure of that. OK,
let's turn to domestic issues now. The Golders Green terror suspect was in court today on 3 charges of attempted murder. Our Home editor, Jason Farrell, reports.
Essa Suleiman appeared at magistrates charged with attempted murder. There were 3 counts. The 2 Jewish men stabbed in Golders Green, but also another attempted murder 8 miles south in Southwark. It comes as the terror threat in the UK has now been raised to severe, meaning an attack is highly likely in the next 6 months.
What we've seen is the rising amount of caseload that the joint teams that sort of are coordinated from London across the country of policing and MI5, the caseload they're working on together, about 3/4 of the caseload is Islamist-related terrorism, groups like ISIS, about 1/4 is extreme right. There's a few other marginal bits around the edges. That's all been slowly rising, that caseload.
Another reminder of the threat to Jewish people was this footage, released after the trial of Abdullah al-Badri, here being pulled off the railings of the Israeli embassy last May.
I'm not going to use it for you guys.
Range 288, update.
He was armed with 2 knives.
Not going to use it for you guys, don't worry.
And that morning he told his mother he was close to martyrdom. A jury found him guilty of preparing for acts of terrorism. He'd been in the UK just over 2 weeks, arriving on a small boat for the 2nd time, having previously failed an asylum claim. With the recent threats to the Jewish population, authorities are reassessing now whether planned pro-Palestinian marches in London should go ahead.
I would say to anyone that is seeking to march at the moment to please reflect on what is happening in our country, how certain communities and individuals are feeling. We seek to prevent any cause of hatred, alarm, distress or intimidation at this time or whenever.
But you're not looking to ban the marches?
We will take action if we need to.
There is a backdrop here of increased state-linked terror threats in the UK. Only this week, Sky News investigated a channel on the social media network Telegram, where it appeared that the Iranian intelligence services were looking to recruit in the UK. An Islamic group, probably linked to Tehran, has claimed to be encouraging acts of violence in the UK, mostly against the Jewish community. And it seems that the government is moving towards prescribing the IRGC, Iran's military arm, as a terrorist organisation.
Once that happens, it makes it much easier to be able to shut down activity, because as soon as you can prove that there is an IRGC link in the involvement in any particular organisation with money flows, then you can shut it down.
We are in a period of increased threat, and everyone can help by increasing their vigilance. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Our political correspondent Ali Fortescue has joined us for this discussion. But if I come to you first of all, Zoe, the reference really that we need to pick up on in that report is that the question that these pro-Palestinian marches could potentially be banned. Is that what we're looking at now, and do you think they should be?
I'd be extremely surprised if they did ban them, simply because you know these are peace marches. They're not. You would really.
But they have been described as hate marches, haven't they?
Well,
by the likes of the Conservative leader.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, the Conservative...
You can't say that this is a peaceful Kumbaya march. I mean,
well, you can. I mean, no, wait,
that are yelled, that are shouted,
that's actually...
are not peaceful.
Have you been on one of the marches?
I've seen them. I've seen footages of them.
I don't think you can have been on one. I mean,
I haven't been on one. I put my hand up. I haven't been on one.
You know, they're mainly people the age of my mum. They are like Kumbaya marches. I mean, they're just there is a peace movement in this country. There is a peace movement, and you struggle to ban the iterations of a peace movement that is centuries old. I mean, centuries old.
So I think you're right to say that many of the people on the marches do have peaceful motives, but there is an element who are chanting... I mean, the Jewish community say that. I mean, they're not making it up.
No, I mean...
They say that these people are chanting offensive things. They're, you know, globalise the Intifada. That's been shouted. They're saying, you know, people should be, you know, from Jerusalem to the sea. All of that stuff. That is not peaceful. That's very hostile and very aggressive.
Well, I mean, that's quite a strange proposition, right? That because a thing has been shouted at a time that you've probably seen on social media, that people are no longer able to congregate in the service of peace. You literally can't say. And also,
you can't gaslight people.
I'm not gaslighting anyone.
Saying,
I'm not gaslighting anyone.
I've seen what I've seen.
Of course you've seen what you've seen, but there's, you know, if you had a march next weekend, it would be about the war in the Middle East, A. It would be about the attacks on Lebanon, B. It would be about the attacks on Gaza, C. It would be a peace march. Now, you can say terrible things have been shouted, and you'd be right. Yes. But the truth is, you cannot say in the middle of a war that people can't march for peace.
But it's more serious than that, because...
It's not more serious. There's nothing more serious.
No, the aggressive shouting is leading to a climate, this is the argument, in which Jewish people are being attacked. Now, it is a fact that they're being attacked. You can't say...
No, I wouldn't deny that at all. I wouldn't deny the rise
in... So clearly something in the water, something in the atmosphere...
Absolutely. Look,
is leading to these attacks.
Kwasi, look...
And it's not a crazy thing to say that these marches are creating that
Let's bring Ali in on this, and the marchers who's sitting here watching the to and fro.
This about Zach Polanski, obviously this is slightly different, so we'll just focus in on what he said, because he has actually apologised. And just to remind people that, there he is, this was basically after the attack. There was footage that we saw of police using tasers while they were arresting the suspect and kicking the suspect. And then there were posts on social media criticising the tactics that police use. Sure. Zach Polanski retweeted one of those posts. And that has what led to this really extraordinary letter that I'm sure you might have seen already from Sir Mark Rowley, the police commissioner, directly writing to the leader of a party. I mean, that is very unusual. And now we have this apology from Zach Polanski saying everyone in leadership has a responsibility for lowering the temperature at a time of such tension. And I apologise for sharing a tweet in haste. Police responses to emergency situations such as these do need later reflection in the right forum, but I accept that social media is not the appropriate channel for doing so. So, yeah, you know, he's basically saying that, yeah, maybe there'll be later reflection, but he got this wrong in the first instance.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Sir Mark Rowley was wrong to intervene? I mean,
no, because
criticised him for being political.
No, I think, I mean, I knew Mark Rowley when he was head of the Surrey Police, my constituency, so I met him many years ago. He's a very balanced, very sort of even-tempered person. And when you read the letter, when we saw the letter, it was really angry. So clearly what Zach Polanski had done had infuriated Sir Mark, and I think he rightly, you know, slapped him down. And as a consequence of that, Zach Polanski has very kind of, you know, belatedly rather, apologised and said, you know, he probably misspoke, or whatever the phrase he used. So I think Sir Mark was right to protect his forces, his police officers, and to call out Zach Polanski.
As of yesterday, the Green Party were suggesting that they still needed investigations into the arrest and the manner of the arrest.
Yeah, I mean,
because the suspect has a mental health.
Yeah, let's scroll out for a second. Mark Rowley made that intervention. It was an unusual intervention, but he was intervening on behalf of his own force. Yes. He wasn't. You know, the Daily Mail has this as Zach Polanski's extreme anti-Semitism. He wasn't making anything that could remotely be called anti-Semitic. He was making a point about police brutality. Now, that's fine. I think he did do it over hastily. I cannot think why any party leader would like a tweet without checking what had happened. It's just
reposted it without comment.
Absolutely ridiculous. But this is nothing to do with the issue at hand. It's to do with the manner of the arrest. And so Mark Rowley was basically saying, "Leave my boys alone," which is fine. But it's not like, oh my goodness, finally there's a grown-up in the room. He's got as much skin in the game as anybody else.
I agree with that. I think he had to protect his police officers, but the tone of the letter suggested that he was very angry with Polanski. And Polanski's basically, it was a half apology, but he's sort of retreated.
And they're meeting now, we should say. It sounds like they're both going to meet. That was something that Polanski asked for.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see how that's going to go.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, it's unclear whether it's actually Sir Mark Rowley, but the Met have said that someone is going to meet him.
OK.
So we'll see.
We shall see.
Yeah.
Staying with politics, very interesting too, the front pages talking about challenges for Sir Keir Starmer, West Streeting and Andy Burnham.
Yeah, I mean, the papers, Gillian, are absolutely awash with plots a week out from the local elections. So you've got The Times talking about a plot for anyone but Angela, The Guardian saying that Andy Burnham planning to return within weeks, The Telegraph talking about Wes Streeting saying he's got the numbers and he's ready to go. You know, you can't believe everything you read in the papers. And I have just been told that Wes Streeting has actually WhatsApped a group of Labour MPs saying there is currently an industry in fishing expeditions by lobby journalists at the moment. Don't feed it, it undermines all of us fighting elections locally. So Wes Streeting has just sent that to a group of Labour MPs. You know, his allies say that he's not plotting, but he is planning in case things do go wrong. And look, you know, I think the mood among MPs, people, I think it is completely fair to say, no exaggeration, to say that a bulk of Labour MPs do think that it is a question of when, not if, Keir Starmer goes. And so with the May elections, there's been so much focus on that. You've got to ask the question, what happens next? I'm not totally clear that any MP right now has the 80 that you need to pass the threshold. But, you know, and the things that people would say on Starmer's side are that he's done well on Iran and maybe that will protect him for a bit, and there's not necessarily anyone that everyone's coalescing around. But, you know, are these the headlines you want a week out from the local election?
But Zoe, your paper is saying that Andy Burnham has more than the 80 required.
I don't want to be disloyal to my own newspaper, but I don't know why we're calling this an exclusive, because everybody's been saying this for ages.
There have been a lot of exclusives recently, I have to say.
I know, right? And it's like, well, kind of sort of an exclusive. Basically, the Guardian's, sorry, I won't do the air quotes. The Guardian's exclusive is that Andy, there are people ready to step aside for Andy in his area. So Clive Lewis, you might remember, offered to do it yonks ago, but he's in Norwich and that wouldn't work. But there are kind of 4 geographically appropriate MPs prepared to stand aside for Andy, and that was true when Quinn stood aside, and then the NEC blocked him. You'll remember. So that has been in the water for ages. It's a testament to Keir's weakness that suddenly it's really gathering steam. But the truth of it is, it can happen if Keir steps aside. Somebody steps aside for Andy, the by-election happens. Kwasi, I know, thinks the by-elections are too dicey.
I think they're very unpredictable.
To count on it.
I think they're very unpredictable.
But I think you probably could predict. There are enough people who think of Andy as the king over the water that you probably could get like a kind of well.
So the risk there is, and also, of course, in a by-election, you sometimes have a situation when the parties stand down their candidate. So let's say a Labour MP, decides to leave, and Andy is the candidate, which I think is still difficult for him because of the NEC, the National Executive. They're still the same people as they were when they blocked him in February. And let's say he stands. The other parties aren't all going to fight each other necessarily. They might decide, actually, we've got to stop this guy from getting into the House of Commons, and you might just end up with one Reform or one Green or maybe just 2 candidates, which will make his job harder to win the seat. And you just can't predict what the outcome of that will be.
Yeah, but listen, if he finds himself against the united right-wing candidate, which is a coalition of the Tories and Reform, and he can't beat that candidate, then he's not the right guy. He's not our guy.
You're absolutely right. But for him, it's high risk. Okay, it's not a simple thing. I mean, it's not just a question of counting to 10 and then you're in the House of Commons. He's got to fight a by-election.
Yeah. Bad week for Starmer, but it has been a good week for the King, which leads us on to our next story, who's now been welcomed to Bermuda. King Charles is now on his own after he and the Queen's US state visit is on his first trip to a British overseas territory as king. So I suppose, first of all, we should talk about the success or otherwise of the US state visit. You're smiling.
Well, I mean, I'll sound like the bad fairy godmother because I was super against the king visiting. I think it kowtows to a regime that increasingly looks tyrannical and brutal, and it's a kind of stain on the dignity of the royal family, which I wasn't huge about anyway, but it is. But then, I can see that everybody's enjoying it, and I heard a really happy whiskey maker earlier, so I don't want to be the person ruining things for everybody.
Look, so I think he played a blinder. I think the special relationship, our relationship with the US was in a very rocky place. I think he came in, he did a good job, he made a witty speech. Trump clearly loves the royal family. And
he's still quarrelling with Starmer, though, isn't he?
He is, but given where we were, I think
and
for the king himself, he hasn't been in post that long. This was a huge success. I mean, this is probably the most significant foreign trip he's done. And whether you're a Republican or pro-monarchist or whatever, you've got to, give credit where credit's due and say he didn't put a foot wrong. He performed really well.
And Ali, do you think that he achieved anything politically on behalf of the government?
Well, certainly I think the government are very happy with how this has gone, and they knew that it was going to be a really tricky thing to navigate. And, those speeches, credit to his speechwriters, he did manage to navigate the humour, and he didn't really put a foot wrong. So, yeah, I think number 10 are happy. Obviously, you were talking about whiskey, and it looks like there could be some more wins down the track. So, yeah, I think the government are pretty happy. And I think, from Donald Trump's perspective, we forget that actually he's not polling very well in his own country. And for him to be seen next to the king polls well for him as well. So, yeah, there's two sides to it.
Absolutely.
Everyone's a winner. Zoe disagrees. Coming up next, we're going to take you through the newspapers, the front pages. Stay with us if you can.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
You are watching The Wrap. Well, before the break, we were talking about the King's visit in Bermuda, and our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock, is there with the King in the capital, Hamilton. You've just rushed out from an event. Tell us how it's all going.
Well, I think after a demanding 4 days in the US, where the politics, the diplomacy felt it was really full throttle, being in Bermuda feels far less fraught. This is the King's first visit to an overseas territory since becoming King. These territories are different to the realms of the Commonwealth because they're essentially a slice of Britain just overseas. Simply, they might be self-governing, they might have their own constitution, but ultimately is the UK that's responsible for them. Very much a relic, a remnant of the British Empire. Anyway, there was this big ceremonial official welcome for the King today. He then went on to meet school children. There were several themes in his engagements throughout the trip. But interesting, he was also greeted by a series of gombe dancers. Now, this is a culture born from the transatlantic slave trade here. A very vibrant dance performed in front of the King, but it is a symbol of resistance to colonial authority. And it was quite a moment, I thought, seeing the King watch this dance, given the history behind it. He then went to a small exhibition to learn more about the slave trade and where Bermuda fitted in with all of that. And let's not forget, when it comes to their links to slavery, the royal family certainly have not always got it right. So it was an interesting moment, I thought, in the trip for that. Lots of people asking the question, you know, do you think the King should make a formal apology for slavery? And there's certainly a mix of views here. It's also worth remembering here in Bermuda, they did hold an independence referendum back in 1995. A majority voted to stay as they are, so they're keeping the monarchy. I don't feel that debate here is as fierce or as intense as it might be in some Caribbean countries, certainly. But I do think it's a conversation that hasn't gone away. It's something the King is certainly aware of. Just the first person I met here, I was talking to her and she said, I do think it's time to steady our ship. But anyway, lots of different views on that in Bermuda. It's definitely not as intense a debate as it is, say, in Jamaica, for example. But the King here and really trying to get as much done as he possibly can. This is Bermuda is a territory very proud of its diversity. So the King had 9 engagements covering off different bits of the island, different islands, sort of seeing some crabs being released back into the wild, learning more about the indigenous bird species here and the threats to them. And there's a big garden party taking place right now. So a busy day for him in Bermuda, and obviously more engagements tomorrow too.
Thank you so much. Just very quickly before we go into the papers, Chrissy, I wonder if you could just tell us about your views in terms of reparations and apologies.
Look, I think it's a very difficult issue. I think, obviously, there's got to be an acknowledgement of injustice. But how you put a price on that? I mean, some of the figures I see are absolutely eye-watering. And if you say, look, we need £20 trillion or $20 trillion, which I have seen, there's no way that any government is going to agree to that. And I think, in a way, you're discrediting the argument if you have some preposterous figure, which is 6 times bigger than the UK GDP.
What about apologies, though? From
I think they've tried, and I think successfully, to say, look, we're responsible for a lot of this. The King personally, given his sense of history, I think is very caught up in this and feels that he has to do the right thing. And it was very interesting to hear your reporter, your correspondent, say that actually in Bermuda the issue of the monarchy isn't as intensely debated as it was 30 years ago. So I think you can agitate and you can stir the pot on these things, but I don't think calling for $20 trillion of reparations is remotely sensible.
Your view?
Well, actually, the thing is with reparations is that as soon as people start trying to put a number on them, everybody freezes, governments and right. Royal families. They go into a defensive crouch. They're like, well, now I can't say anything because if it then kind of turns into a game of consequences where because I've said sorry, I'm then held responsible, I can't afford that. But actually, people who are having serious conversations about reparations, it often isn't like some ridiculous price tag figure that no government could afford. It often isn't entirely even money. It often is about kind of community building, climate justice, relationships going forward, the climate relationships going forward, treaties. Is often about the kind of basic respect and the future. And I think that gets really lost as soon as you kind of panic about money.
But you're right. But also, a lot of the international aid which we've been giving over the last decades, 5, 6, 7 decades, a lot of that, the implicit understanding, it wasn't spelled out. Nobody said, oh, we're giving aid to these countries because we exploited them. But the implicit understanding was that the West had a responsibility to give aid to countries which had been exploited in the past. Nobody spells that out, but we do give a lot of international aid, and a lot of that, I think, the sentiment behind that is a form of justice or trying to make right some of the wrongs of the past.
So an undocumented.
Yeah, they're not going to say, 0.7 is because we completely
I mean, I would have been
countries.
surprised to hear that coming out of DFID, to be honest.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't have said that. I mean, but I think the whole aid movement, coming as it was after the colonial era ended, was an implicit recognition that people had to.
So you
give
think that was definitely the sentiment?
I think that was part of the sentiment. I think that has been part of the sentiment.
We must move on to the papers now. Let's see what's making the front pages. The front of The Guardian leads on what it says is Andy Burnham's plan to return to Westminster and challenge the PM, reporting he's identified seats where MPs could step aside for him. Meanwhile, the Daily Telegraph reports Health Secretary Wes Streeting has the support of more than 80 MPs to trigger a leadership bid within days. The Eye leads on a vastly changing political map ahead of next week's local elections, with polling suggesting Reform and the Greens are on course to upend the status quo. The FT leads with a stark warning from traders, saying the oil market is 4 weeks from a tipping point that will drive prices significantly higher. The Times says the UK's most senior police officer blames social media for fuelling in what he calls an epidemic of anti-Semitism. The Mail leads on mounting pressure on Green leader Zach Polanski after he apologised for retweeting criticism of the police officers who arrested the Golders Green suspect. The Daily Express says fishing boats may be forced to stay in port amid soaring fuel bills as trade leaders claim costs may soon outweigh earnings. The Mirror reports that officials in New Mexico are questioning former staff of convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein about the ex-prince and other guests. The Daily Star leads with criticism from football legend Thierry Henry, who says the modern game has become too much like chess and is being over-analysed. The Sun reports Ross Kemp has signed up for Celebrity Traitors, with the EastEnders star heading to Scotland this weekend to begin filming. I wouldn't describe him as EastEnders star. It's years since he's been in EastEnders. He's done many more things since then.
But he
say
is.
documentary maker now, actually.
That's right. It's what he's associated.
That sounded very loyal.
Let's start with the Times and the fallout from the Golders Green terror attack. The front page there, which comments from the Met chief: British Jews face greatest ever threat.
Yeah, look, I think they do. I mean, you look at the last 70, 80 years when a lot of Jewish people came to Britain after the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust. Many of them for generations have built lives here. And anecdotally speaking to many members of the Jewish community, they haven't felt as unsafe in Britain, ever. And so people are leaving, they're going to Israel, some are going to the United States. And I think it's a real crisis. And I think for the government, it's particularly important that they can actually not just say words, but can actually do things to make this community feel safer. I don't see how anyone could disagree with that. But the reality is, I mean, we saw senior Labour politicians go to Golders Green, they were heckled. There's a real lack of trust, I think, between a large part of the Jewish community and the British government, and I think that's a bad thing.
Zoe, do you think the Jewish community will be satisfied by the promises that have been made by Starmer to support them?
I mean, they aren't promises, are they? There's just a lot. They are genuinely just words, and I don't know how. I don't know what words you say that aren't genuinely.
Well, he has promised more money to be put into security.
I mean, I wouldn't be.
Policing.
I wouldn't be satisfied. Look, it is undeniable, and it's not anecdotal. The anti-Semitic attacks are up 104%.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know, there is a crisis of hate crimes across. Islamophobic hate crimes are also up massively. There is no world in which you can say these hate crimes are a category different to these hate crimes. You have to actually deal with hate crimes.
Yeah, but you
have to deal with all hate crimes. Hang on a sec. Please, I haven't finished. So, if you're going to deal with all hate crimes, I agree with you. I don't think like extra security guards, extra police are the thing. I think it's like you don't want to send your kids somewhere and see a bunch of extra police there. You just don't want to. That's not what you want. So what you have to do is just something much more systemic. And I think this is what Prevent was trying to do, but is not working at, because it's identifying the wrong thing, and it's not identifying violent incubation. Instead, maybe it's kind of identifying it, but it's not preventing it.
No.
So it's just not working.
And to say, I mean, what I wanted to pick you up on was this idea. I'm sure it's not what you think, but it came out as if you thought, well, if there are Jewish attacks on Jews, well, there are just as many attacks on...
No, it's not that at all.
There's just as much Islamophobia. No. So we can sort of live with both.
Well, no,
all of these things are wrong.
Well, exactly.
But what's specifically the threat now are these attacks,
No, the
which are very
it's
a very specific threat. And we need to do this.
This is it, is that hate crimes are extremely virulent and widespread in a number of different communities. So it's absolutely true that the spike in anti-Semitic attacks is the highest at 104%, but that does not mean that the spike in other hate crimes isn't also alarming. And the point is, if you pit one group against another and say, this is more important than that, rather than saying, why have we got this kind of hotbed of hatred going on, and why are interests being pitted against each other when these are just people, then you do not solve the problem. You absolutely don't.
I think you're being very diplomatic.
I've never been called that before.
but actually, I think we've got to call out the problem for what it is. I mean, we saw a clip earlier of someone trying to climb into the Israeli embassy. Clearly, he was wearing a keffiyeh. Clearly, I think he was a radical Islamic terrorist. That's what he was convicted for, but trying to commit acts of terror. And we've got to call that out and say, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, but nobody's saying Islamic terrorism is acceptable.
People pussyfoot around the issue. They don't talk about it. They don't say, this is what this issue is about, and we've got to be tough on it. I heard reports on other channels where they don't even mention radical Islamic terrorism or Islamism. They don't mention that. They just think it's something that is sort of in the air. And it's regrettable. But no, we've got to try and identify where the threat comes from.
Do you not think that the Prime Minister has done that, and he has been specific? And he said that, it's all of our problem, anti-Semitism. It's a cancer that needs to be cut out of the
I don't
society.
think he's been frank and clear enough about where the threat is coming from. And that's not to demonise a section of the population.
What you're doing is you're creating this kind of straw man. Let's not talk about the thing. Let's talk about all those people who aren't talking about the right thing. Now, it is a straw man. Everybody looking at a man convicted of Islamist terrorism trying to climb over some railings with an obscured face says that person is dangerous to society and belongs in prison.
But there's an ideology behind it. But there's an ideology behind it that needs to be addressed as well.
Of course there's a violent terrorist ideology behind every death, every attempt to kill another person. Of course there is, but that's not... Well, I mean, I think what you're trying to paint into a corner is that some hatred is worse than other hatred.
I'm not saying
I don't think that's right.
I'm saying that we're talking about anti-Semitism. We're talking about these attacks
in
North London. And I'm saying it's perfectly reasonable to ask and to answer the question, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? without being called racist, without being
You're doing the straw man thing. Nobody's calling you racist.
Without being accused of victimising a section of the community. And I think we should just have a grown-up conversation
Nobody
about
even accused you of that, though, did they?
No, you didn't. But people have been accused of that. People have been accused of that. For
some people over there by some other people over there. I mean, you've got to deal with the conversation you're in.
Right. Okay. We're going to change tact slightly now and talk about the movies, what's out. The Devil Wears Prada 2 is out today. Famously, the main character, Miranda, is rumoured to be based on none other than fashion icon Anna Wintour. Our podcast presenter, Neil Patterson, did an in-depth interview with journalist Paula Froelich about Anna and her impact. And a warning, the following clip contains some flash photography and comments about where Neil gets his sense of style.
Anna Wintour is a lot of things to a lot of people, but she got to where she is and controls pretty much everything you wear because she was for many years the editor of Vogue. American Vogue. Now she overlooks all of Condé Nast editorial. So she is also over British Vogue. She is also over all the worldwide Vogues. She is also over Vanity Fair. And the New Yorker. Well, the New Yorker has more independence, but every other magazine that comes out of Condé Nast, she either oversees, and you better believe that somebody who worked under her is now at the top of it.
Just explain why she is so powerful in this industry. I mean, clearly, you can see me at the moment, Paula, and I am not a dedicated follower of fashion. For those who are like me, just explain why she was able to wield such influence from, an editor's chair.
Absolutely, I will. And by the way, you may not think you're a dedicated follower of fashion, but there is a reason why you chose that shirt, is there not? It's not just some rando thing. You saw it in a store and you liked it, correct?
Yeah, indeed.
And one of the reasons why it's in the store is because someone designed it. And the reason why they designed it is somebody asked them to because it followed a certain trend. And most likely, Anna Wintour had something to do with that trend.
Neil there considering where he bought that T-shirt and why he bought a plain white T-shirt.
He looks so
the idea that Anna Wintour invented the suit for men, which is what I'm wearing now, is ridiculous. But I don't know anything about her world. I have read a biography of hers. And what I was amazed at was how focused she was from a very young age. Her father was a famous journalist, so she had a kind of step up. But she was very, she didn't even go to university. And then just dedicated herself from her teen years to fashion. And of course, once she got to the top, she stayed for a very, very long time and kind of refused to
She's
let
still
go.
there,
Yeah,
still at the top.
She's still at the top.
It is remarkable, whether you like her or not. I mean, it's a remarkable
about
career.
Her since 1989, but only...
Really?
Well, only the things that people would pass around like contraband. For the whole of the 90s, she only ate steak and spinach for lunch every day.
Is that the Atkins diet?
Yeah, it was the beginning of the Atkins diet. She kind of made the Atkins diet.
But there's that, I mean, in the book I read, she's just intensely focused. There's a kind of maniacal focus on that sort of detail. So I can totally believe that for 10 years, she just had...
And it's kept her at the top.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. Coming up, controversy on a record-breaking day at the Snooker World Championships.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world? Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood is rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need? Time now to catch up with all of the very latest sports news with James.
Hey. In 2020, Jude Bellingham's move to Borussia Dortmund caught the eye. £25 million for a player who'd only ever played in the Championship. But there's now a wider trend of players outside the Premier League getting moves to Europe's top 4 divisions. So what's behind that?
We look at Championship, we look at League One, we look at League Two. So it's a market we look at a lot, but we are being very realistic at the same time. If you are looking to play very good football, great atmosphere into the stadium, in a very competitive league, and maybe look, to make a step further somewhere when you leave Toulouse, and then a low money, then you should consider us.
It's different type of football out here. It's like in England, it's very intense and physical, and I feel like here, it's tactically, they've more focus on the tactics and the technical side of things, so you have to be more composed on the ball and figure out patterns of play, and it's good for my football brain.
Not many players get the chance to go from League One to the Bundesliga, so I thought I'd take that jump abroad and see how things go.
When I came, we worked a lot on my defensive shape, my positioning, small details and stuff like that, and I feel like I'm a different player from when I first stepped into this building.
It's not just the top 4 leagues where British and Irish players are settling. There's opportunities across Europe, across all the leagues, and the chance to play for massive clubs.
Sancho was the first real big name to take that step as well. And obviously me going to Excelsior is not as big as going to Dortmund, but it's kind of the same thing in terms of moving away from home, building a name for yourself outside of England. Loads of young English players started to do it. I think that was the first time from what I knew of anyway. And yeah, it kind of became a trend.
When I went to Greece, especially like playing in front of fans that are like crazy, you know, it changes the whole atmosphere of the game. I've had different types of managers, you know, Italian managers, Dutch managers that want to play different types of football, so I've had to adjust to that as well. When you go to play in Europe, you know, you open yourself to a whole nother market now. Playing in the Conference League, Champions League, Europa League, I'm glad to say that I've done that, you know. It's definitely something I'll look back at and think, you know, wow, I'm grateful for doing that, and I'm glad I took that risk to go and play in Europe.
I made the move, wanting to improve myself as a player, go and experience something else. Like I said, a great club like Anderlecht, I can't speak highly enough.
Thank you, Dave. Coming up, why President Trump says he's not satisfied with Iran's latest proposal for talks. Much more coming up at the top of the hour. The American president saying that he's not happy with exactly what the Iranians are saying in terms of not wanting to give up their capacity to enrich uranium. Stay with us for more.